So I've been doing one of these other ones in my morning class, and we're all obviously all up to the same layer, which is the details. So let's see. I'm just going to grab one of my photos. Now, where would we like to start? That's the question. Probably at the back, I think. One of the back ones. Okay. Magenta, it will be. Which is surprising us all, I know. Actually, when I have a little look at it, I do see a tiny bit of, we could do this a tiny bit more blue. But let's see, do I want magenta or blue? Maybe we'll just start, just for the sake of something different, the tiny bit of blue. So like a ultramarine, just a really nice mid blue, not too warm, a bit cooler I suppose. That kind of nice blue there. And we're going to get straight on to that technique that I've been doing. So, for those of you who don't know, let's see, where's my palette? I can bring it into the shot somewhat more. And we can have a wee look. So what I do, there's my blue there, so if we make a little bit, and I think I said this last week, so you know, strangely enough, that the stronger your colour is, once you sort of do that to the brush, lift it up, and so that it has some nice splayed bristles, it is much lighter. So it's really quite a surprise to me how much lighter it is than the actual wash. And I wouldn't go back into that wash when I need a little bit more on my brush. I just, there's always sort of a tiny bit on the area where you're smushing it around, and I just sort of pick that up really more than anything, because you really don't want this too wet, because they just join back together and they don't give you those lines of colour. So that's that. Let me know if you want me to repeat that. But I feel like you've probably seen it before a little bit. So this is that, just a ultramarine, I believe. My memory serves me correctly. And just because when I did open up the photo, it sort of felt like it gave me a bit of a blue feel to his back. So I'm just going to lightly feather in some of that colour, and I'm not making a wash of it, otherwise I would use a regular paintbrush. I'm doing this just really to start that process of some lines of colour, and I'm really aiming to get as sort of singular lines as I can. I'm just going to actually turn it over just a little bit and just run it down this side here, as carefully if I can, just to set that little edge there is a little bit blue, so I can see, and you'll be able to see on the video more than you'll see here now on the Zoom call, that it just created a couple of lines going down there, which I like. And we can just maybe go over the whole photo. I'll have a look at the while I've got blue on the brush, you know, have a look and see where I feel like the flower's looking a bit bluer, and pop in a few little lines and through here, very carefully, obviously following the shape. I don't sort of plant it down and move along. I kind of try and drift into the paper so that you don't get a sort of a heavy start. And if you feel like you haven't quite got that technique, do it from the other way. See, from this way it's very sort of, you want it to be very light coming in and in through here, because there's more colour. Of course, you wouldn't notice if you got a bit of a heavier start. So if you're not quite comfortable in doing it that way, then I would suggest you just come in from the other angle and come down. But it's really about maybe moving the paper around so that you're in the right angle, so that you can do whatever's most comfortable. So just a tiny little bit, because it does, as it curves around, it gets quite cool in there. So, and I've just that highlight that is just sort of more that we've been keeping for a while there, I just moved over that just ever so lightly, so it knocks that back a little bit, but overall will still be a light area. And this in here is going to be some more shadow anyway, so we can build that up a little. Just like that. So just there. I don't think I'll do too much anywhere else. I quite like it when I keep different areas, so that we're going to have a little blue touch in there, there'll be a blue sort of purpley cool touch in here, and then we fill up this with a bit more magenta, and it'll just give a nice sort of variance of colour really as you sort of look at the painting. So I'm just making up just a little bit more of that wash. We're still doing sort of it's a little bit light, maybe I'll make it a little bit stronger. So there we go, back to that. Smush it around and pick another place. Let's see. That's quite warm in through there, and it's quite warm. I don't think I'll do that. I might come down to this back part. Now this brush is a tiny bit big for this size painting. If it was a little bit smaller, then it would be a little bit more dainty and easier to get into the corners and so on, because obviously it gets wider as you smush it out. So that's my my trouble. Hopefully you've got something that's a little bit lighter or a little bit smaller in a brush, and then that'll be okay. Now what I've done is I'm just starting to come into that curve of that white, the lighter area that we've left. Just pulling a few little bits of blue. I was going to say strands, but it's kind of like here. But little bits of blue up into there just to start blending that a little. And surprisingly, there's quite a lot more colour on the brush than you think. And I suppose it's because I'm using a somewhat larger brush to make very fine lines. If I was making really fine lines with a fine brush, you're constantly going back to the palette to pick up a wash. And because I've got some bristles on this, it holds more of the wash. So you don't have to go back very much. I'm just softening that edge where the blue came into that little bit of light area. So yeah, you can sort of just go around with that brush for quite some time, which I quite like. I don't have to keep going back and forth so much. So let's see. That was good. We'll come up to here. This part in through here is a little bit cooler. So it sort of comes up and around and down that side, so definitely can add a bit of blue. I'll turn the brush around as well, just paint on sort of the edge, whatever I have going. That's probably enough for here. Just emphasise that a little bit more. It's quite a bit cooler in through here. Okay, and then let's see. This is a really nice part that has a nice little glow thing happening. So we've got our blue. I'm just going to soften that edge a bit more. This sort of strip of pink into purpley blue, I just want to make that softer. So I might have to leave that to dry for a little moment or two before I come back onto that. And I'll soften this. Just a second. Let me just do one thing. Hang on. That and that. Okay. There we go. That should be better. Alright, so we'll definitely leave that to dry for a little bit. So I'll move on to a different part of the petal. Still with the same blue. I'm just going to do... I think I might just do this side of the petal. I think I'm going to leave that side, particularly in through here. It's quite a bit cooler where it sort of curves. And just obviously having a little look to see how that does curve. Very light. You can see some. I'm not sure if you can pick it up. You can see some little streaks of colour. It's nice to obviously start lighter than you need. And we'll put in a bit more magenta so that will go over top of that. And as my brush gets a bit drier and I'm more sure that I won't get too much colour on, I can drag it down into this much lighter area here. So it just adds tiny lines of colour, but nothing too much. And let's see, we've definitely got a few things in here we can do, but I might have to turn my brush onto the side of it. And we've definitely got some sort of lines. They're a little bit heavier than I need them to be, but I'll water them down in a moment. Just like that. And this edge, because it is quite a bit darker, we can just add a little bit more blue. So light and whispery is what I go for, as much as possible. Let's see how it's a bit drier there, so we can come back in here. Interestingly enough, this flower, like I've done this technique on other flowers, of course, but the other flowers have not been pale, so excuse me. Problem with that is you've kind of only got, you know, 1 or 2 shots at it. Like, I mean, if I drag my colour in and it's too much, then, you know, I've just gone over the white and it's more than I want. And obviously being lighter is better, but normally this isn't a problem for me because my flowers are darker and I don't have any white space, so I don't have to be extra careful. Like, you know, if you make a little bit of a mistake and it's a bit darker than you wanted, doesn't matter because you're going into a dark area. Going into light areas is a bit more tricky. You kind of need to get it right. So it's very light, but it's okay for the moment. I just want to, because what I'm wanting to do here is I'm really just wanting to drag in just a couple of lines if I can, and just really, you know, because I want to keep it white, so I want to just see, I don't know how much colour I've got on there, I just want to see if I can just drag in, just like that, just a few little lines of colour and not cover it all too much. Yeah, that's mostly it. Let's see. And you may be able to pick up that I'm going in over the stalk a little. Which I'll come back with my water brush and just blend out. There's just like a few sort of ribs of colour coming in through there that we can do. So there's a little bit, and of course the stalk is so much darker that once we paint over that it wouldn't be a problem. Any sort of stray lines that get picked up on there. Okay, so that's that done. Now let's see the bottom petal, if that has, it does have a bit of blue that I'll put up in the top. Unfortunately Miss Jane won't be probably putting blue up the top because hers is going into the greeny reds over there, but I don't know if Jane, if you'll want to put blue up the top, but up here I was kind of quite cooler, so that's what I'll do. I'll move, and you know what I might do is I might zoom in a little bit now, so I'm just going to readjust the camera so that we have a close-up of this whole petal, and then that way you'll get to see it a little bit more, because I'll continue on that petal as well. So just a sec.